When conflict flares up in West Asia, the economic effects quickly ripple outward. A disruption in the Strait of Hormuz sends a shockwave through global supply chains that lands directly on the Indian subcontinent. This exposure translates to rising transportation costs, increased industrial overhead, and eventually higher electricity tariffs for the average household. These rising costs are occurring despite India's status as a world leader in the clean energy transition, following a decade of aggressive growth in wind and solar infrastructure. This chart shows the progress made by March 2026. Renewable sources had grown to account for 42.4% of the country's installed capacity, the total theoretical power the grid can produce, finally overtaking coal's 42.2% share. Even with this massive clean energy footprint, domestic electricity prices remain closely tied to the global price of Brent crude oil. This is because installed capacity is not the same as actual generation. In April 2026, while renewables made up nearly half of the grid's potential, they generated only 15.8% of the country's electricity. Coal, by contrast, provided 71.8%. Measuring the success of a green transition purely through capacity numbers creates an illusion of progress, while leaving the economy vulnerable to the volatile fossil fuel market. This leads to a central question: why is there such a significant gap between the clean energy India can theoretically produce and the power it actually uses? The issue is intermittency. This 24-hour graph tracks wind and solar output, showing how it fluctuates wildly. Adding a baseline for constant consumer demand makes the problem clear. A modern economy requires continuous power, but renewables only provide it when the environment cooperates. Every second, an electrical grid must perfectly balance supply with demand. If gaps in renewable generation aren't filled immediately, the result is a blackout. Building more solar panels increases peak energy at noon, but it doesn't address the fundamental mismatch of when that energy is consumed. Because India currently lacks large-scale battery storage or a highly flexible transmission grid, that excess daytime energy cannot be saved for later. A reliable, controllable power source must be ready to step in at the exact moment renewable output drops. This is baseload reliability, the minimum amount of continuous power needed to keep the system functioning. Currently, coal is the primary source providing that stability. Coal performs a stabilizing function within the grid that renewable energy in its present form cannot yet replicate. In effect, renewable energy is being added on top of the existing coal infrastructure rather than actively displacing it. Because the grid stability still relies on coal, the domestic economy remains indirectly chained to the global commodity cycles of fossil fuels. When global crude prices spike, it raises industrial and transport costs, which in turn pushes up coal prices and inflates the everyday electricity bill. Spain and China have moved toward a different model. China has reduced its grid's reliance on oil and gas to just 4%, while rapid electric vehicle adoption has cut their oil demand by over 1 million barrels a day, insulating them from these specific price shocks. For India, the benchmark for progress needs to shift. Success is no longer just about producing more green power. It requires a total system transformation. This means moving investment beyond capacity additions and toward grid modernization, transmission connectivity, and the massive storage infrastructure needed to integrate renewables at scale. Until a system is built where renewables can reliably substitute for fossil fuels on demand, every spike in global energy prices will serve as a reminder that the green transition is still running on coal.